The United States elections are not over. Despite what you might well see on the 6 o'clock news, I have not lost faith that there is a process and an outcome. And whether it's Biden or Trump or Biden, I hope it's Trump because we need that strength in that position. But I want it to be sure as to what's happened. There's some dodgy stuff that's happened. It's been like the second biggest miracle after Jesus took 2 loaves and 5 fishes and fed a multitude at a Sermon on the Mount, because they've taken a couple of 100,000 votes and turned them into a couple of millions in umpteen states around America. I mean, Daisy, it does have biblical proportions, this cheating that's been alleged.
Look, it's fairly extraordinary what's going on, and certainly contrary to what is being reported in the vast majority of the American media and a lot of the Australian media, might I add. The claims that the Trump campaign is making of not even election, I mean, fraud implies intent, but election irregularities, illegal instructions given by Kathy Booker, who's the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania, the legitimacy of the count, the fact a lot of Republican poll watchers were not granted what they call meaningful access to watch the count, which means that according to, Trump personal attorney Rudy Giuliani, about 682,000 votes in Pennsylvania are potentially unlawful because they were not observed according to the law. There's an interesting...
A lot of votes.
There's an interesting mathematical analysis of different spikes of votes coming in. There are a lot of sworn affidavits and testimony being put forward in the courts and also in front of the Republican Senate committee. And of course, as we know, legally, and a sworn affidavit filed under penalty of perjury counts as evidence. Whether it's good evidence or whether it proves anything, of course, is up to a judge. But for the media to relentlessly insist that these are baseless claims, there is no evidence, there's no evidence of fraud or irregularities, is a lie. The media is willfully misleading the public as to the reality of the situation. There's also this insistence that Trump is losing court case after court case after court case. That's also not true. According to Rudy Giuliani, they only actually have about 3 cases on the go. And in any case, if a court case gets dismissed, well, one can always appeal to a higher court. It's fairly simple here. And the most important point here is that the media is insisting that Pennsylvania has certified its votes, and so is Michigan, and so is Wisconsin, these other states. So that's it. That's final. That's not the case. Votes can be decertified by a court order, and not only that, Article 2 of the Constitution decrees that it's not up to the courts, it's not up to the governor, it's not up to the Secretary of State to certify votes or put forward electors. The buck stops with the legislature. And while some states have delegated that power to the governor or the Secretary of State, they can take that power back whenever they want, which is why it is a very smart thing the Trump team is doing now, holding hearings with Senate committees in Pennsylvania and Michigan, whether a legislature is Republican, and convincing them rather than the courts. So please, people of Australia, do not believe what is being hurled at you by CNN or the New York Times or the ABC or anything. It's not true. There are legs on this yet, and I am fascinated to see what happens.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to talk through it. I mean, Donald Trump had a few words to say about it, not quite conceding, but accepting that, if he does lose, if he is in fact not the president, if in fact he will move out of the White House, is a little bit of what Donald Trump has had to say.
It's going to be a very hard thing to concede because we know there was massive fraud. I'm going to go with another question. Go ahead.
So if the Electoral College does elect President-elect Joe Biden, are you not going to leave this building?
Just so you... certainly I will. Certainly I will. And you know that.
I mean, Bronwyn, I know that you're not sitting on Twitter and Facebook and doing all that sort of stuff, you, Twitface and all those different sort of websites day in, day out, but it's extraordinary that now people trying to send through a Twitter account a reference to an article that's been posted by people in Trump's defence team are now having that particular reposting rediverted and questions being flagged and tagged saying, oh, this may not be a proper thing you're being directed to. There is a robbing of people's right to know claims so they can make some decisions of their own. The way in which big tech is in fact trying to control this is extraordinary.
Well, it's not big tech. It's the people who own big tech. They are an oligarchy. And this is always bad. You can't have them operating in society. Now, you know, the United States has its Sherman laws. It can act to break them up. I mean, AT&T used to be a hugely monopoly of communications in the States, and I was in the States when they broke it up. And now the thing that is, I think, that's important about this Trump continuing to pursue these issues through the courts is it is quite clear in the way in which, under the cover of COVID, states changed their laws so they could send out unsolicited postal votes. Now, that's when the President, Trump, started to say, this is fraud, this is what's happening, and I'll fight it. And I think his strategy was to get a turnout that was big enough to overcome the fraud. But that didn't happen. But when you ask yourself this, how come the Republicans won a net 8 seats from the Democrats? Looks like they'll probably maintain the Senate. Depends on the runoff, of course, on the 5th of January. And then lose the presidency. How is that so? Because if you look at the way in which the Americans vote, where they're voting on so many issues when they go into vote, how is it that did some of those ballot papers come back only voting for the president and not on the other issues?
Yeah.
That's right. There are so many questions that have to be answered. That just doesn't add up. And there is Daisy, you'll probably remember the name of the state where it is alleged that there was 1.8 million postal votes sent out, but there were 2.5 million postal votes counted in the count.
Pennsylvania,
That's Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania again?
Yeah.
Why am I surprised?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, not surprised.
The key state.
So, but the fact is, if they build this precedent into their voting system, they can do it again and again. The Republicans will never win an election because it'll just be treated this. There is nothing to stop people taking those ballot papers and simply reproducing prints of those ballot papers and then sending them back and putting them into the count. You know, the possibilities with unsolicited postal votes is huge. It's
really evident that every ballot paper has to be seen. Every ballot paper has got to be checked. Every one of them has got to be cited. And if there seems that you have to have a number of checks to vote in person, but only one to vote via mail in some of these states, all the rules are all over the place. And oh, heavens, for the first time ever in my life, thank God for the Australian Electoral Commission. At least we've got a standard rule across the country, you know.